Well, good day, eh? In today's episode, we will be looking at the first cartoon appearance of those two very best friends, Klingons and Tribbles. So, alright, Krupla!
Indeed. So, we start off on board the USS Enterprise, where they are escorting two robot ships delivering grain to the starving people of Sherman's planet. You know, crop failures, famine, starvation, cripes. Technically, they just need two more horsemen and they have themselves an apocalypse. But the grain they are shipping is no ordinary grain, it's some fancy space grain called Quinto-Triticale. But there is a Klingon ship in the area, and they are attacking this small, poor little defenseless one-man ship. Huh, a bit of overkill, to use a Klingon heavy cruiser for that, hey? But Captain Kirk figures, he's got no choice but to help out this pilot. It is a Federation civilian ship, and he has to protect Federation people. It's his job. So he tries to beam the pilot out of the ship before it becomes part of a flying scrap heap. But the Klingons being Klingons, they don't like no Earth people around these parts, even though these parts are, Federation space, so really it's the Klingons who should skedaddle out of here. But they don't. Instead, they blast the Enterprise with this rumored new weapon that they have. It's a beam that creates a stasis field around the Enterprise, basically making it paralyzed, right? Like, even Sulu can't do a damn thing. He can't fire phasers or shoot photon torpedoes. Navigation systems are down, like nothing can happen. Uhura picks up the phone and it's the Klingons calling. And it's our old friend, Captain Koloth. And the Klingons are pissed. They want that pilot from the ship. He's an environmental terrorist. He must pay. And if Kirk won't release him, well, they'll just board the Enterprise and take him by force. So with not too many options and with Uhura's help, Kirk gets the two remote control robot ships to go ramming speed to hit the Klingon cruiser. Koloth tries to use the stasis field weapon on those ships as well, but it overloads the system. The Klingon ship is completely drained, which was part of Spock's plan as well. He didn't think the Klingon cruiser could produce that much power for all of that weaponry. And damn it, that pointy-eared bastard is right again. So the Klingon ship being basically dead in space, they turn tail and run. Which is not really Klingon-y, but they gotta do what they gotta do. Luckily, after the stasis field is gone, Scotty is able to fully beam the pilot aboard. Turns out the pilot is Cyrano Jones. And he brought a bunch of Tribbles with him. Oh, that makes so much more sense why the Klingons wanted to kill him. Frickin' Tribbles, that's why! Tribbles, man. Those furry little things that multiply like rabbits on steroids and Viagra. They get everywhere. But these ones are all hip, apparently. Cyrano Jones has genetically modified these Tribbles so they don't reproduce. The perfect pet. And in case these Tribbles get out of hand, Cyrano Jones has found a Tribble predator, the Glomma. This is kind of a disgusting looking thing, but it eats Tribbles, so, problem solved, right? And even Dr. McCoy is forced to agree with Cyrano Jones. After a careful examination, it is confirmed that these Tribbles do not reproduce, they just tend to get more and more festively plump. Suddenly, the Klingons return to murder Cyrano Jones, and they attack the Enterprise. But not that much of an attack, really. Unfortunately for them, their ship's not back to full power. They only do minor damage to the Enterprise, so yet again, they turn around and leave. But still, that actually caused more problems aboard the Enterprise than the Klingons realized. With the robot ships carrying the grain being damaged, the Enterprise had to put the grain on board their ship. And after that quick little Klingon battle, man, the grain containers broke open. And the Tribbles are on board, so you guessed it. The Tribbles are getting the mad munchies and going to town on the grain. And worse yet, they're getting bigger. And worse yet, the Klingons have returned. This time, the ship has recharged back to full capacity. So with a revamped stasis beam, they immobilize the Enterprise again. So Kirk tries to immobilize the Klingon ship by beaming over a bunch of Tribbles to them. But how can they beam things over when there's a stasis field on this ship? Huh. But it turns out the thing that the Klingons really want is the Glommer. The Glommer is a prototype creature that the Klingons created in order to destroy the Tribbles. And they need it so they can copy it and make more of them. Which Scotty, being a total mensch that he is, he actually beams the Glommer over to the Klingons. But because the Tribbles have grown so large, the Glommer can't do a damn thing with these Tribbles. There's no way it could eat even one of them. But this large Tribble on a Klingon ship gets exploded, and a bunch of regular-sized Tribbles fly all over the ship, leaving the Klingons drowning in Tribbles. How the hell does that make sense? I thought they just became larger and they can't reproduce, so how did it turn into a colony of Tribbles? Turns out, Cyrano Jones's genetic modifications weren't exactly perfect. So Dr. McCoy does some schmenangering, to these Tribbles, and bada bing bada boom, the genetic modification sequences work. So now it's all good. Now they won't get larger, now they won't reproduce, so yay, you got this happy little Tribble you can hand out to your buddies, alright. But it doesn't really matter because the grain will probably be devoured before the Enterprise gets to Sherman's planet, by these Tribbles, and the people there will probably still starve, but hey, at least the Tribbles are fed, so hooray! The day is saved, and with that is the end of this Tribble-tastic episode.
Like, what an awesome episode, eh? And what a sequel episode! That's one thing that I do kind of like about this animated series is that a lot of the episodes are sequels to some episodes from the original series. And if you're making a sequel to a story, man, yeah, going with Tribbles, like, you can't go wrong.
And this episode was written in true sequel fashion. Like, you have to raise the stakes for the new story. So, like, what is worse than having a bunch of Tribbles running around and causing havoc? Well, having a bunch of giant Tribbles running around and causing havoc. So well done on that point. And I really do enjoy how since the last time the crew has met with Tribbles, they are all completely fed up with these things. Even Spock! He suggested that they throw Tribbles through the vacuum of space at the Klingon ship. You really did done messed up when you piss off the guy who suppresses his emotions.
As odd and cute and cuddly as Tribbles are, man, like, they only showed up for one episode in the original series, but they made such a huge impact, right? Like, everyone loves a frickin' Tribble. Well, unless you're a Klingon. And the Klingons in this episode were pretty cool too, man. Like, even the return of Captain Koloth, the ruthless yet very civilized Klingon captain. And the fact that the Klingons had this new fancy weapon that the Federation had to investigate, like, damn! That's like something out of the original Star Trek series! That is one thing that I really like about this animated series, right? Like, it is a children's cartoon series. It is written for kids, right? But, like, the writers and the producers and everyone involved in the show, they treated it as season 4 of the original series. So you still have these really cool kind of concepts and stories that, do appeal to the older audience. So the stasis field beam, as kind of interesting as it is, like, it totally makes sense and it totally flows with all of Star Trek. So if you haven't seen this episode and you like Tribbles, definitely check it out, right? But with that, we do have some more information about Tribbles and this and that and other stuff and kind of stuff like that over here.
So yes indeed, Tribbles and Klingons, best of friends, hey? Let's take a quick look at these two, starting off with Tribbles. So Tribbles were created by screenwriter David Gerald. He had two main inspirations for Tribbles. The first inspiration were an invasive species of rabbits were introduced to Australia, their population grew, and they became ecological and agricultural terrors. They destroyed everything. And the second inspiration was a fuzzy keychain. So put these two compatible things together and boom, you got yourself a Tribble. And with that, he wrote a Tribble story for Star Trek, and the Tribbles debuted in the season 2 episode called The Trouble with Tribbles in 1967. The episode established that Tribbles were basically born pregnant and are always hungry, and are cute, small, and fuzzy, and make really wonderful sounds, yay! And they were especially hungry for the Canadian space grain, Quadrotriticale, and they don't like Klingons. There was a little bit of a concern about the story, as some people noticed it was kind of similar to a story written in 1952 from Robert A. Heinlein. In the novel The Rolling Stones, it featured a species known as the Martian flatcats who were kind of like Tribbles. They were cute, cuddly, they ate a lot, and they took over a starship with their rapid population growth. But Gene Roddenberry was able to kind of smooth over any potential lawsuits that may have arisen from that. So it's all good. This Tribble episode was so fantastic that Gerald tried to write a sequel episode that would have hopefully appeared in season 3 of Star Trek. But that plan was quashed. Instead, the animated series came around and Gerald was able to write a script for that series, being this featured episode, which is quite super fantastic, right? Sequels are usually pretty good. We get to see genetically modified Tribbles in a different way, like growing in size. That's pretty impressive. We also seen the return of a lot of characters from the Trouble with Tribbles episode. Obviously with, the Tribbles and their, I guess technically their manager, Cyrano Jones. For the Klingons, we did see the return of Captain Koloth and his first officer, Korax, and the important mission of sending space grain to Sherman's planet. One of the best parts about this episode was actually these robotic ships that carried stuff, in this case grain, but it's great because in the original series they really didn't have that big of a budget for models, so they reused the same small little models for a bunch of different civilians and or other people. But to create these ships that look so unique but still, very Federation-like is just fantastic. The first of many different looking ships, so it's pretty awesome that we finally got to see that. There was a third episode in this Tribble trilogy, or this Tribble-G, I guess, in the Deep Space Nine Season 5 episode called Trials and Tribulations, where the command crew of Deep Space Nine tried to stop a time-traveling assassination attempt on Captain Kirk, which was conceived by failed Klingon intelligence officer Arnie Darvin. So you bring that character back as well, and this episode took place during the events of the Trouble with Tribbles episode. So it's Star Trek fan crushing on Star Trek. Fantastic! Outside of this Tribble-G, there were a couple of other Star Trek episodes featuring Tribbles. In Star Trek Short Treks, there was an episode called The Trouble with Edward, where we learned that Tribbles originally did not reproduce very fast and were not born pregnant. On board the USS Cabot, Lieutenant Edward Larkin genetically modified Tribbles to become born pregnant and to reproduce at a quicker rate in order to become a food source for a nearby starving planet. Problem being was that they reproduced way too quickly, they overtook the Cabot and the ship was basically destroyed. An interesting story, right? But I don't think you really had to explain why Tribbles are the way they are. I kind of assume that's just the way the species was, So yeah, maybe not needed, but I guess kind of interesting. And up to this date, there was a 5th Tribble episode in the series Star Trek Prodigy called A Tribble Called Quest. In this episode, there was a Klingon scientist who was genetically modifying Tribbles to become more aggressive and I guess more Klingon-like. They had teeth, they bit people, they were very aggressive, and they could grow in quite large size. I guess it's that old Klingon saying, if you can't beat Tribbles, genetically modify them so they join you. But still, a pretty interesting concept, right? Like, it did kind of follow the original series and animated series kind of versions of Tribbles, and ever since the animated series started genetically modifying Tribbles, that's pretty much all you've seen from them since. This would also be shown in an episode of Star Trek Picard, where they have created Attack Tribbles. But beyond that, you didn't see a whole lot from Tribbles. Like in every other Star Trek TV series or movie series, Tribbles were here and there. They might have made a quick cameo, or they were seen in the background, which is kind of funny because Starfleet did consider Tribbles to be very dangerous, with their rapid reproduction and their need to eat all the time. Like, they have become illegal to transport and I think to own Tribbles. Some of the reasons why Klingons hate Tribbles so damn much too. There is no honor in destroying agricultural resources, So Klingons did actually go on a bit of a war with Tribbles for that main reason. Sometimes referred to as the Great Tribble Hunt. But speaking of Klingons, let's do a quick little brief talk about them too. The name Klingon was actually inspired by one of Gene Roddenberry's police buddies, Lieutenant Wilbur Klingon. A lot of the writing staff did not like the name Klingon, but nobody came up with a better name, so Klingon stuck. So Klingons first appeared in an episode of Star Trek's first season called Errand of Mercy in 1967, which would be during the Cold War. So the Federation was technically a stand-in for the United States, you could also say the United Nations, and therefore the Klingons were originally a stand-in for the Soviet Union. The budget for the original Star Trek series was not that great, so you couldn't make Klingons look super fantastic. So these Klingons had bronze skin, facial hair, bigger eyebrows, and unkempt hair. You know? The look of the Klingons would change in Star Trek, the motion picture from 1979, where we seen them with these fantastic forehead ridges. And with the introduction of Lieutenant Worf on Star Trek The Next Generation, we would explore Klingons a whole lot more. With this writing, they were not a stand-in for the Soviet Union, they were just, another race of people that we really started to learn more about. In the 4th season of Star Trek Enterprise, we did learn that Klingons did have some augmentations done, and some of them did lose their forehead ridges, which was part of a treatment against a mutated virus on the Klingons, which is why in the original series era you did see flat foreheaded Klingons, and why you would see Klingons with the rigid foreheads later on. So pretty much for these two, that's all I have for now. We'll get into the other stuff when we get into it, because like I say, for Klingons, there's so much. So we'll leave it all done here. So with this, that, those, and the other things, I guess that's that. Also, if you're interested, I created my own comic book channel, 215 Comics. And currently, I have created my own cartoon series, The Adventures of the Density. And recently started a radio series featuring my newest character, Elastoma, with more titles to come. So if you want to check it out, I'll leave a link up top here to that channel, and some links at the end of the video. Yeah! Right on, and there you go. So thanks for watching the video. I hope you liked it as much as I did making it. Also, feel free to check out the source material that I featured in this video. And if you want to leave a comment on anything you may have liked or things I might have missed in this, feel free to do so. Or anything else, just to say hi. That's cool too. And other than that, have a great day. Thanks.